Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of APB. So, a very good episode where we had Murphy joining up with a FBI agent named Charlie, who apparently her and Charlie have history on multiple levels. One being the fact is that Charlie actually used to work at 13th, and also because there was kind of a little bit of a thing between Murphy and Charlie. It was around the time her and Scott were having their issues. It's like, Charlie was a good friend, they clicked and everything. The way she makes it sound, it was like a one-time thing. But it's a situation where it's like things were already bad with her marriage, and then this situation just made it worse. So I don't know if she's saying that in the sense of like Scott found out, or just because it just made things worse in the sense of like she had to living with the fact that she did that while she was still technically married, which is kind of like, I'm not going to fault her for that, because it's like, if things were bad, I mean, of course you're going to want to be with someone who's a little more, well, who's probably the opposite of Scott, who's someone you can communicate with, not have to be caught up in all, the bullshit. I mean, at least that's how I look at it. But the way she talked about it, it seemed like it might have just been a one-time thing. Maybe not. Like, the closeness was probably always a thing, but them, being together, like, in an intimate sense, probably was like a one-time thing. Maybe not. But nevertheless, this deals with the fact is that Charlie has an informant that he's worried about is dead. So he's like, at the very least, he's going after this dude named Benoit, who's like this big time drug dealer here. And the fact is that he wants, at the very least, get any evidence he can, because he can't find his informant Jesse anywhere. Because at the beginning we see his informant Jesse is like being found out. Basically, he's being dragged out at the water on a boat, like making it seem like it's just some assignment. But the fact is that he's about to get killed because they found out he's working with the FBI. Never really found out how they ended up finding that out. But I guess it's one of those situations where it's like, he is a powerful man, he has his connections, or the fact is he just always has an eye on all of his people, just hoping he won't find anything, but if he does, he's always ready for it. It's kind of how I assume about that. Side note too, really quickly, before I get straight too far away, the actor who plays Charlie, I don't know his name, but I've seen him in stuff. The most recent thing being Survivor's Remorse. If you've never seen that show, I highly recommend you check it out. It's a kind of comedy / drama that it's on Stars, at least here in the U.S. I don't know what other channel it might be. I don't even know the status of the show. I don't know if it's done, whatever its situation is. The first time I only watched up to probably like maybe halfway through the second season. At least with the first season, it's really short. There's only like a handful of episodes. So I mean, I highly recommend you check that out, just because that just popped in my mind a moment. So I was like, hey, it's you. But nevertheless, the whole point is trying, because Jesse has the, obviously his testimony will put someone like Benoit away. And obviously at first he runs away from them because it's like, oh, you kind of screwed up trying to protect me before. No way am I going back to being your informant. I'd rather run away from all of this, get as far away from you and Benoit. Is kind of the mentality he has. Which is like, they bring it up later on. It's like, the fact is, if we can find you, obviously Benoit can find you too. I love the fact is that he was running from them. And then you had Gideon be like, is Murphy going to be able to catch him? And you had Conrad being like, well, the fact is, I've seen Murphy chase out a suspect down 90 flights of stairs and catch the guy without breaking a sweat. And Murphy does it effortlessly. Because she is like the first one, out of any time, chasing down a bad guy. She's at the front of it all, and she always catches her dude. And when it's all said and done, it's not like she is out of breath. It is like she's just she kills it, dude. Because even Gideon's like, man, she's a badass Murphy, dude. She seriously is a badass, because you make it look like nothing, So just continuing to show just how awesome she is. But there was a situation later on in the episode, ended up getting tracked down by Benoit's guys. The situation where they're low on ammo. The fact is, Jesse's shot. It's like, what are we going to do? And I love what Gideon does. Basically, with Pete's help, he basically kind of hacks into Murphy's car. It's like he needs to know which systems he can, which systems do what, so he can operate them. Obviously, it's the point where he can, basically control it. I mean, he wouldn't be able to reverse it. So it's like, okay, kind of like, make sure you're driving in the right direction. Don't need a backup, because if you need a backup, you're screwed. Which he burst into, I think, what was it? He said Yahoo or something like that. And they're like, wait, Pete's kind of like, why would you say that? He's like, Dukes of Hazzard, just having so much fun with it. And luckily it all ends very nicely. There was that little sweet moment between Charlie and Murphy where Charlie was like, Murphy, like, Teresa, the fact of the matter is, I gotta say this. She's like, are you really doing this now? He's like, I might not get another chance. We might die here. He's like, the fact of the matter is, I always kind of felt like there was something between us. Obviously, the fact is, things didn't work out then, but it's like, I've always thought, like, maybe we could always give this another shot. Murphy's like, yeah, we don't regret the past. The fact is, it happened, and I like that it happened, but, it's probably not a good thing for that to continue. And so, I also love the fact is that, that's before Gideon gets the idea. And then Charles said, wait a minute, was he listening the whole time? He is offering her a job later on in the episode. It's like, obviously you can be an FBI agent, but for her, she's like, nah, 13th is her home. It's where she wants to stay. Especially not knowing where this whole situation with Gideon, which I'll get into Gideon's situation soon enough. But the fact is, like, his whole situation and Reeves Industry, she's like, at the very least, like, Gideon's helped me out a lot. At the very least, I can do, he's kind of my, he's kind of all of our partners, but more so than anything, Murphy's partner. Cause I feel like it's kind of interesting. Like, out of anyone there, he interacts with Murphy, obviously, the most. She's kind of like the head, like, I'd go as far as saying, like, head cop, cause she is a detective and everything. So obviously it kind of makes sense, like, ranking wise. But, like, the fact that she's like, at the very least, I need to be by his side, see, kind of weather the storm together, that no matter where it all ends, at the very least, be by his side when this all happens, which you had, Charlie being like, at the very least, I don't think Gideon's going anywhere anytime soon. I'm thinking it might be because it's an interesting thing where you have, like, because previously, Murphy had asked, like, 2 episodes ago, had asked, Gideon about her whole situation with his whole situation with Lauren, and he's like, it's complicated. And in this episode, he kept prying not only to Murphy, but also to Conrad about the whole Murphy and Charlie situation. Which, I mean, she was very upfront about, like, yo, this happened and this happened. And he's like, oh, but what about it? She's like, stop, digging. Which is kind of interesting because her mom's bringing up the whole fact of the matter. She's like, oh, yeah, you need to kind of get a man in your life, essentially. And she's like, Mom, stop. It's like, well, the fact is her son's asking about the birds and the bees. She's like, oh, that's the type of conversation a father should have. It's like, oh, I mean, there is that kind of nice, rich dude that you work for. She's like, I'm not going to, like, date Gideon, I guess in her mind for 2 reasons. One, Gideon's technically her boss, so it'd be probably almost like a repeat of the whole situation with Scott. I mean, granted, Scott wasn't her boss, but he was also in the law enforcement, department too. So it's like she's probably not going through the whole trouble of dating a coworker again, just too much trouble. It led that direction before, and at the same time, it's like I don't think. She probably might not look at it as like a right fit, but to me it's so obvious, like the relationship they have, always having each other's back, the kind of looks they give each other, it's like you totally have a thing for each other. Why? Because like I don't know, like I bring it up countless times, like especially with crime dramas where you have, characters like this where it's like there's totally a thing there, but it may not be 100% willing to admit it. More so than anything, I'm sure in her mind, it's like, for one, I don't need a guy. Like, I'm fine the way I am. I'm a strong, independent woman. I don't need a guy to really help me out. But her mom's just kind of like, get a man. Like, I get the feeling like the way she kind of talks about it, it seems like she never really cared for Scott. And she probably looks at, Murphy and it's kind of like, good. Like, that should have never been a thing to begin with. Now go out there and find you the right person, essentially. So, being a mother, obviously. So, but it seems like there might be a situation where it seems like Charlie was kind of hinting at the fact is, well, he has a reason to stay, obviously, that being you. So I think, obviously you had Gideon kind of reading into the situation and wondering what Murphy and I don't know. It didn't seem like necessarily like a jealousy situation. It seemed like there might be a hint of it. At the very least, it seemed like he was curious though, but to me, it seemed like, because there is a little bit of that, and maybe it's a situation that you just haven't realized it yet, or what, but I'd be very interested to see where that goes. Another side of the story has to deal with the whole Reeves Industry thing, and I called it like I figured that's where the episode would go. I mean, where the story would go with Reeves Industry. It's like the board of directors are literally voting to have him suspended. The fact is that and once again, Lauren ended up backstabbing him in the back because she's the one that went to the board of directors to be like, hey, we should probably do this because it's like we're losing a crap ton of money because of Gideon. A lot of investors backed out because of like him not wanting to go through with APB Prime. The fact is a lot of them are backing out, and it's kind of like that kind of makes the business like suffer a huge loss. Hence why Lauren and others are like, hey, we need to do this, which sucks for Gideon because it's like the fact is you're the person who's always claimed to have my back, and you do this like the moment my back's turned, you stab me in the back. It's like you're always talking about how you look after me and you do this to me. The fact is, we sleep together and everything. You think that would mean a little something to her, but she's like, the fact, because for her, it's like, the fact is, with you leading the charge, Riva Industries is going to suffer huge, monetary losses with money and everything. But she's like, it was never about the money. She's like, yeah, it is. A long time ago, she's like, I might have thought it might have meant something else, but I was kind of foolish to think that. I've learned my lesson. So to me, I interpret that as like, obviously there was something between her and Gideon, kind of still is, but now they probably keep it as a little flirtatious and some intimate moments here and there, but nothing too intimate, nothing like relationship building type of situation. They could probably keep it very casual, very, hey, let's keep this exciting, but like nothing further beyond that, because it seems like they might have tried that in the past. It didn't work out. Now, for what reason it didn't work out, I can assume with the type of person Gideon is. The fact is, and it's the same mentality Lauren is always accuted to him, to everything in his life, that the moment he gets bored and something isn't challenging anymore, he moves on. Like I said, I'm not saying that's who he is, but maybe that's how Lauren felt. Like maybe he dived too deeply into work and she felt like maybe she came second, because Gideon does seem like the type of dude that once he like something's in his way, like something's like he's interested in it, like everything else kind of falls to the wayside. It's kind of like what happens, like, not trying to allocate like comparing women in his life to the projects he works on, but there could be an argument made that he treats them like projects, which I don't know, we haven't really seen him in a relationship. Like obviously him and Lauren isn't really a good example, especially with that information now kind of being presented, that maybe wasn't always the best boyfriend. Not that he was a bad guy, but it's just like his mind isn't there. His mind and heart don't always 100% line up in that regard. Maybe his mind's always 1,000, even if his heart's here, his mind's 1,000 miles away. So that's at least how I saw it. But when it was all said and done, because of working with the FBI and everything, because using that awesome deep seeing submarine, which apparently costs like $50 million. I love the fact is they constantly have to throw out how much money a lot of that stuff costs, because it's like, yeah, the fact is I kind of borrowed this, and a lot of people at Reeves Industry were super unhappy about the fact is that I did that. So but thanks to that, the FBI is taking an interest in it. So, obviously a lot of the tech started at the 13th, but it's a situation where the FBI is kind of garnered some of the tech too. So it puts Gideon in a more favorable position to be like, okay, now we're making profit. As you can see, the FBI is kind of brought in on this whole situation, and we're giving them some tech. So bad guys, watch out. So I guess that's enough to kind of fend off the sharks. For now, it's going to make things super awkward between him and his board of directors, I'm sure, because it's like, oh yeah, you guys wanted to kick me out, but sadly I'm still here. It's like, I'm sure they're not even going to apologize. I mean, they might apologize, but it'll probably be half-ass apologies. Like, oh, we were only trying to do, what was best for Reeves Industry, and it's like, oh, I'm the one that started this, so you're saying I'm not best for Reeves Industries. Well, it's a whole thing. What we do have in the end, though, is Lauren leaving that note. The fact is that she was like, I've always kind of looked out for you, but now the fact is I don't have to, because there's someone else covering your ass, in this particular case, Murphy. Now, I guess she's completely left the business, because I'm more so than anything, it's probably like she feels like she probably can't work with Gideon anymore after doing this. It's probably like, their relationship's going to be strained and awkward. Not unless she's still at, Reeves Industry, and, maybe we might not see her around, but she'll probably still be there. But she probably won't pop around as much, or maybe she did quit. I don't know. Until we watch a little further in and that story continues. The way it seemed like she might have quit, but I don't know. It seemed more like maybe she's still there, but she's not going to meddle too much anymore in the future. Really will have to wait and see. So, because the question has come up before, and it definitely popped up in this episode too. It's like, if things went south with Reeves Industry, would Gideon have to leave? And that is the question, because Conrad brought it up, but, Gideon kind of dodged the question too. Like, when dealing with all that whole industry stuff, it's like, if things kind of go badly, does that mean your time with the 13th will be over? And he's like, I'm kind of keeping my secret. So I'm very interested what would happen to Gideon, because a lot of his stuff, a lot of the tech he gets, that helps out the police kind of comes from Reeves Industry. And if he gets booted out, they'll be like, oh, we own this. And if you steal it, even if you were a part of it, even if you're part of making it, the fact of the matter is it's our property now. We own all rights to it. You take it without our permission, you're screwed, type of thing. So, but I'm sure he's not out of the woods yet. This is probably still just the beginning. But I'm sure there's going to be more to that going forward. Very just like overall, I really like that storyline element. The fact is, he still has a business that he has to appear to. So, but another part of the story deals with Ada, like her whole situation with this Danny dude. It's like that favor she owes him. Basically, he wants to take down Gideon because he has a problem with what Gideon's doing. It's like using the term police state. And it's kind of a similar statement that Ada had about the whole APB Prime situation. It's basically, I think, I'm not well versed in like what that necessarily means, but I can assume, once again, I based my own assumptions upon that last episode, which I will continue, is the thing basically money rules everything. That as long as you have enough money and power, that basically you can kind of run things, make things in the government kind of play the way you want to. It's kind of the mentality that, it's like you adhere to the rich and powerful, and those who aren't rich and powerful kind of fall to the wayside. That basically the whole checks and balances part of our government mean nothing when you have money to kind of throw out there to kind of get your whatever way you want. So he's kind of got the same mentality about Gideon in general, working with the 13th. It's kind of like, oh, you're basically giving not just the police, but him too much power to kind of do whatever they want to, kind of skirt around things. Because as we know, the whole situation with Scott, as he's kind of bringing that up, the fact is that Gideon kind of breaks a lot of rules and everything. So it seems like he shares that mentality. He wanted Ada to kind of put a device into Gideon's system so that, it's like, oh, this way he can keep an eye, police the police state, in this particular case, keep an eye on Gideon to make sure he's not crossing too many boundaries, which there was a thing that brought up. I didn't realize that it happened. Maybe I'd missed it in the episode, but there was one guy that died in the explosion. I thought she was nervous because like someone could have died, but I didn't realize there was at least one guy that did die during that whole heist situation when she called him to blow it up, which at the time he didn't know that. So more so than anything, this is also, I guess it's his way of taking out against Ada and Gideon, possibly putting him in that situation. I mean, it seems like he already had his problem with Gideon, but now it's just like this whole Ada situation on top of it, like forcing him to become a killer. It's like, oh, that blood is also on your hands and everything. And then, she wants him to do this, which Ada was about to, but then Conrad came and gave her donuts. Obviously, the whole thing at the beginning where she showed up, she wanted donuts, but had already eaten all of them. It's Conrad's way of being like, the fact is, I want you to know that you're appreciated. You do a lot of good work and you help out around here. So, we kind of be lost without you. So this is kind of a thank you and everything. So it made her realize, like, the fact is she can't help Danny because it would mean not only betraying Gideon, but everyone else that's there. That's still something we really don't know too much about, like Ada and Gideon's whole situation, or how that, maybe we'll kind of get into it next episode, because obviously, Ada backed away from it, and she's like, no, I'm not going to do this. She got, Goss and Brent to kind of look into Danny, but by the time they got there, he wasn't there. He saw them there and destroyed all his files. And basically he told Ada, like, oh, you tried to do that to me? The fact of the matter is I'm coming after you and Gideon, and anything that gets in my way, I will destroy it. So it's a situation where Ada decides to quit, because I guess in her mind she's like, yeah, he may hold a grudge against Gideon, but more so than anything, because of what I've done, he holds an even bigger grudge against me. So what I'm gonna have to do is keep my distance. This way I can protect Gideon and everything that he's doing here, because if I stay here and he, especially because Gideon's like, oh, I help you no matter what the situation is. She's like, I don't think you can, because the fact of the matter is what it involves. The fact is that bomb going off hurt someone, so it's like technically, in her mind she's like, I'm party to someone dying, no matter what the circumstances were, even if it was for the fact is that I was trying to help, the fact is someone still died because of my actions and everything, which, like, this whole situation did not turn the way I thought it was, but I'm still waiting for this to come back to blow back on them in another situation. Obviously, I feel like this is the start, and eventually it's going to come back. Somehow Scott's going to get this information and try to use it against them, so I'm just waiting for it. So there's still always the opportunity for that to happen. That was always my mentality, that Scott will find out and use this against him. But it seems like so far, obviously, Danny's kind of being the biggest issue right now. But I'm sure, like I said, Scott will kind of get it at some point later on down the road. So, but I think more so than anything is like Ada doesn't want to kind of get anyone else mixed up in it. It's like, I made this whole situation by going to him for a favor in the first place. I should have never done that. Once again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So it's like you started off with the best of intentions, but it's just like you kind of, made a deal with the devil, essentially, kind of. So now he's coming after her and Gideon just because, his own personal reasons for going after Gideon. So, but like I was mentioning earlier, I do feel like there is an opportunity to learn a little bit more about Ada and Gideon's past, maybe, because obviously it seems like, from the little bit I caught glimpse of from like my peripheral because I try to look away from the TV so I don't get caught up in spoilers and stuff like that for the next episode. But it seems like, obviously Gideon's not going to let this go because Ada's a friend and everything, a co-worker. So it's like, I'm not going to, obviously something's going on and I want to try my best to help you and everything. Even if you try to push me away, I'm going to help you because it's like, oh, you're trying to hide something from me and I'm going to figure out. It's it, because like when it all went down, Gideon already had a feeling there was something there. And I'm sure he probably looked into it. He might not have said anything. He might have started, but then maybe he's like, oh, I'm invading a friend's privacy. She's got her own thing to deal with. I'm just going to leave it alone. So maybe it's something he already looked. Maybe that'd be the case, or maybe he already 100% knows. I don't know. I feel like if he knew, he wouldn't be asking what's wrong, and he would have already confronted her about that. So overall, a very, very good episode on many different fronts. Just like overall, the different story elements that popped up. It's like it's technically like 3 parts to this story. So overall, very good. So. Very interested to see what really goes down in the next episode with continuing this whole situation. So, like I said, that seems to be the main focus of the next episode from my own thoughts and from like the tiny bits I've like couldn't help but gleam a little bit. So, or see, random, yeah, whatever. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.